It's my great pleasure to tell you about Yuka. He has deep knowledge of the automotive industry. He's an automotive engineer by training. He has proven skills educating at all levels: auto manufacturer, dealers, EV owners, retail consumers, and university graduate students. After several years as a manager and a trainer with Ford in Europe, Yuka came to the United States, where he has built programs for utility companies, condominium and apartment building charging, workplace charging, DC fast charging, outreach and education, and smart grid integration. In 2010, he founded Plug and Connect, his consulting business, and this focuses on transportation electrification. In 2012, he started the Minnesota PEV Owners Circle, which has become one of the largest and most active regional plug-in vehicle owner groups in the nation. Yuka will share best practices of event coordination, including some of the awesome results that he has achieved in Minnesota. We are proud to introduce Yuka Kukkonen. Yuka, take it away.
Thank you very much. So, thank you, Rosine. It's very nice of you. As Rosine said, I've been working with EVs since 2009, so last 10 years. So, great that all of you are here with us. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Talking today with us about electric cars and the events that we can put together. Could I get the next slide, please? All right. So, as Rosine said, we in Minnesota do almost close to 100 events every year, and it has become very clear that we need to get more of our members involved in organizing these events. So last year I developed plug-in vehicle owners event coordinator handbook, and Rosine learned about our efforts and asked us to provide this handbook also for Electric Auto Association. So we modified it to that, and now we're doing this webinar today. This webinar today is also sponsored by Midwest Evolve project, which is funded by Department of Energy. Midwest Evolve project does EV outreach and education in 7 states. So if you are from Midwest, check them out at the midwestevolve.com. So many of you are old hands in this business. You have organized these events for years, can set up a display and ride and drive event with your eyes closed if you want to. But I still hope that you can pick up a couple of ideas from this. We started to encouraging our members a couple of years ago to really get more proactive so that we would have more people coordinating these events. And I learned very quickly that many of our members they had to kind of learn the whole thing from the scratch. And they often tried to do it to the perfection. And that's challenging because it makes event coordination very exhausting experience. And once you have, and it might be so that once you do just your first event, you might never want to do another again. And we definitely want to avoid that. This is why we have the handbook, and hopefully this webinar will also help you in that way, that you can work with your new event coordinators and help them to get going without doing too much. All right, could I get the next slide, please? So when we start to talk about event objectives, Rosine already shared really what we are trying to do is share good information for anyone who is interested in hearing more about EVs. And in most of the cases, the static EV display is the setup that we do at events. My most simplest approach to events is really to just work with someone who is already putting together a big event. We'll just do one portion of that. So we just talk with the main event organizer, figure out the date, time, and location of the events. I find the volunteers, or whoever is coordinating our end of it, finds the volunteers to bring the car there. We just show up, park our cars, open the doors, and start talking with people. When the event ends, we just hop in our car and drive away. That is how easy I try to keep our engagement. There are, of course, many events where we have to do more or we want to do more, but good number of events we do are exactly as simple as that. So then if we talk about charging infrastructure, the easiest way to show the charging infrastructure in these events is just to show your level 1 cord set and explain how people can use that to charge the car. Most of the people don't even know that there is such a simple way to charge the car just using your normal household outlet. And Britta Gross from GM shared in one presentation that 50% of the Chevy Volt with the V owners and 30% of Chevy Bolt EV, so with the B, those owners use the level 1 cord set as their main method of charging. So it's good to share people that you can just charge your car with normal household outlet. You don't have to do more than that. Naturally, we also want to tell them that if you drive over 30 miles a day, then you should consider installing level 2 station in your garage. And if one of your volunteers have a plug-in level 2 cord set that they can bring, that's a great thing. Otherwise, you can just show the level 1 cord set and say, hey, you can buy similar unit like this, just a little bit bigger, cost about $500, and it's just connected to 240 volt power like dryer or range outlet. So that's the simplest way to do the charging infrastructure. Then when it comes to DC fast charging, of course, in most of the events, you can't hold their whole DC fast charging station. But we do have, if you have a really big event, you could see if one of the manufacturers could loan you a DC fast charging unit. We, for example, have worked for years with ABB so that they provide us their unit, their display unit for our auto show or for our 12-day state fair display. So check those opportunities out too. Ride and drives, very valuable to get people behind the wheel there and get experience of that. We in Minnesota always work with auto dealers to set up these, and I will provide information later how to work with auto dealers on these ones. Rosine will share you more examples where owners have provided EV ride and drive or EV rides at these events. So we are there to provide real life information. What is it really like to own, drive, and charge EVs? We as owners can make a difference just simply sharing our experiences. We don't have to be experts on all things EVs. Just sharing our stuff is very important. Every year these events have become more enjoyable, I would say more fun to do. And I say it's partly because the audience that comes, a general public, is just better informed. They already know something about EVs, so they have better questions. And at the same time, we have also learned more. We have more experiences, so we have better stories. So it's a good combination in that way. So in addition to that, we can then provide some handouts for people so that they can find more information. Just want to caution there, don't provide too much. We don't want to overwhelm people with information, but if we have some information available when people have questions, that's useful. We'll talk more about those a little later in this webinar. And then also remember to share information about Electric Auto Association and your chapter. This is a great opportunity to get some people involved with EAA and your chapter, so share some information about both, see if they want to sign up for a mailing list and so forth. And tell also about your meetings and other events that are coming up. Could I get the next slide, please? So choosing events. We used to do more standalone events in the past, but then we realized that it was so much work and we had really hard time promoting them and finding people there, so that we have actually in Minnesota moved mostly, pretty much solely, to being part of something bigger. So we attend some bigger events that someone else has put together and just provide the EV display portion for those. This is working really, really well because we'll just add another attraction to an existing event and everyone wins in that way. So considerations. First, when you start to look at the event, look at these things and figure out what are the dynamics at the events, how many people they are expecting there, what are the event hours, what is the location of EV display. So that's important, so that we know where we are going to be, and is it even worthwhile event. I have sometimes spoken with some of the potential events where they just didn't have the right location for us. They might have the event, for example, mostly inside, some outside, but the cars couldn't be right by it. And if we are even like 40 feet away from where the actual event is happening, it might not work for you. If you can't get the foot traffic there, you might sometimes just say, hey, for this event, it might not make sense for us to set up our EV display there. So check that out early so that you know that what are you getting into. Can cars enter and exit easily? And will cars have to stay all day? If you have a event that is full day event, let's say it's 8 hours, I would like to split that into 2 shifts. So you have a 4-hour shift in the morning and 4-hour shift in the afternoon. Let's say that you want to have 5 cars on display there. So first 5 owners come with their cars in the morning, they park there, they do the display. Then in the middle of the day, they have to be able to leave, and new owners, well, the afternoon shift will have to be able to come there. So check that that's possible. If that's not possible, then we have to figure out what kind of a display we want to do there. For example, I'm going to be setting a display on this Tuesday for an event that is going to be in the next 2 weekends. It's going to be in a convention center. They wanted 2 cars there on display, but because those cars can actually leave there in between, the cars have to be there practically 2 weeks. So I wasn't expecting any of our owners to provide cars. So then I turned into other dealers and found 2 other dealers that could provide cars for us there. And that's another way to do it, is look into if you can find it from the dealers, if it's just too much to ask from the owners. Look at the location of test drives and rides, figure out if there's a way to put together a safe route and keeping pedestrians and cars separate. That's important there. And also talk with the event organizers, how they will promote the event and how they will promote your display there. I've sometimes been part of the events where event owners have been really excited to have EVs there as part of the event, because they say they were thinking that they will attract more crowd, but then they forgot to tell anyone. And of course, that way, we are not attracting more crowd because people don't know about it. They're happy to find us there, but it didn't serve the purpose of actually attracting new crowd there. And then see what organizers can, what other things organizers can offer you. Definitely free entrance is one thing that I always request if we have our volunteers coming into events, so we don't have to pay the event, getting into event. All right, can I get the next slide, please? So how to work with the main event organizers then? First thing is to get the map. This is crucial again. You want to know where you are. You want to know that you and the main event organizer are on the same page of the location of the display. So that's very, very important. And it's also a very good tool for you then to share with your volunteers so that they also know where they are coming. Then figure out the EV display where it is and figure out the ways to attract the public. Sometimes if you just put cars there on display, people might not even know that you're displaying anything there. They might just think that you're just parking cars there and people are just hanging out by them. So it's good to use some kind of a flags, or use your tent and table as a display there and put your banner there, show that you have something going on there. And that works wonders in these events, definitely. Then the question is, where can you get flags and stuff like that? I truthfully use any flags that I can get. I don't even care too much of what the flags really say, as long as they're colorful and they show far. Because when people come there, they're not going to be paying attention to the flag itself. They're going to be paying attention to the cars, and then volunteers can tell what they're doing there. And then you can also use tents. It's especially good if you're in a hot climate where you need to shade. That's very valuable. We sometimes have those days in Minnesota, not as often as many of you in other parts of the country, but those are useful from that perspective too. And then you can use some giveaways. We in Minnesota run our operations with $0 budget, so we hardly ever have giveaways. But if you have budget, if you have good sponsors that can provide you some giveaways, that's also useful to attracting crowd there for that. So then let's talk about the Goldilocks rules on vehicles and shifts. Keep the event very, very simple for volunteers. One of the mistakes that volunteer organizations make is that they burn out their volunteer base by asking them to do too much. Remember that even though you might be organizing just 1 or 2 events, there are other events that these people will be volunteering, and we want to keep our volunteer footprint as small as possible to not tax our volunteers too much. So we have to make sure that we value their time and don't keep them too long there. So I mean, minimizing the time commitment is a key here. I sometimes get requests from some of the event organizers that could you please have your event set up, I mean your display set up there like 30 minutes to 45 minutes before the event. And I have to very nicely just say that no, we will be there 15 minutes before the event. We know our stuff, we know how to set up the event, we have already good system here so that we just don't have to have our volunteers be there too long. And also when the event is over, just they can also leave at that time. Figure out what's the right number of cars for any event. If you are doing a smaller event, 3 to 5 cars might be just fine for it. We don't have to try to get every single make and model for each event. That's not necessary. Again, if we try to do that, we'll burn our volunteers out. So that's not what we really want to do. If it's a bigger event, we might have 12 cars there. So just size the number of cars that you're requesting based on the events. And even if you have more people coming, you can say, hey, definitely if you want to come, if you like the event, you're welcome to do so. But our display, we already have enough cars for it. So be very clear about that. And then when it comes to variety of cars, often it's harder to find good volunteers, or it's hard enough to find volunteers, line up the volunteers. So I don't try to micromanage too much of the variety of the cars. It's of course good if you can have a good variety of the cars there, have Teslas and have Bolts and Leafs and all of that stuff. But I would much rather make sure that we have the good number of cars than volunteers there. So I practically just set up the events and see which cars arrive. So far, we've been very lucky. We have had always a good variety of the cars. We'll see how it is this year because Tesla has sold so many Model 3 and all Model 3 owners are very excited to share their cars. So maybe this year we will have events where we have 5 volunteer spots and we have 4 Tesla Model 3s there. So we'll see what we need to do at that point. But I'll cross that bridge if it comes. Right now, I'm not too worried about it in that way. Could I get the next slide, please? Then working with other dealers. I said for our events, other dealers are mostly involved because we set up the ride and drives with other dealers. So consider the size of the event and consider how many cars you need. I'll actually go directly to the be mindful of their time. Other dealers are not there at our events to promote EVs per se. They are there to sell cars, which I totally understand. That's what they should be in that way. They are providing good information, but from their time perspective, we have to understand that their main thing is to sell cars. So if you have, again, small event, I would not even bother getting other dealers there. For a bigger event where you know that you can have enough foot traffic and enough test drives, then get the other dealers involved with it. The challenge we have with the other dealers is that we have to follow their sales territories. Every auto dealer has a certain sales territory. So even though I would love to work just like 3 or 4 other dealers that are the most EV friendly and know their stuff, we unfortunately can't do that. if let's say we have a Nissan dealer that has a sales territory A, and we have our event in that sales territory. We can't have a Nissan dealer from sales territory B to bring their car there, because if Nissan dealer from the sales territory A learns about it, they can actually sue the Nissan dealer from sales territory B. That's just how the rules are for auto dealer sales territories, and we can't really do too much about it. So the best way is to really figure out who is the closest auto dealer to your event, talk with that dealer and see what they say, if they know for sure that that's their territory, that's clear. Or you can also, when you start to work with the auto manufacturers, regional managers, you can talk with them and say, okay, I have this event coming here, who is the auto dealership that I should be talking with? And they can help you with that. So that's good. Communicate clearly what you want from them. So tell them where your event is, what kind of a ride and drive experience you would like them to provide, and so forth. That's crucial. And then Saturdays and end of the month are hard, because that's when other dealers are really concentrating on being at the dealership, selling cars there, closing their month, and so forth. In addition to that, Sundays are impossible for most of the states, because in many states, auto dealers are not even open on Sundays. So keep that in mind when you figure out if you can get auto dealers for your events. And these are good learning opportunities for dealers. Many of the dealers have told they have really learned a lot by being there. So get them involved from that perspective too. Can I get the next slide, please? Then talking about volunteer coordination, figure out how many volunteers you need, what kind of shifts you need, and also figure out how much coordination you need to do to make it happen. If the event is longer than 4 hours, I normally set up shifts. So if it's a 6 hours, I have two 3-hour shifts for it. If it's 8 hours, I have 2 4-hour shifts for it. If it's 12 hours event, then we probably have 3 4-hour shifts there. So try to keep the time commitment short enough that people feel that they can come there. If it starts to be 6-hour shift, that is a long time. So keep that in mind. If you have just a couple of people, you have just one shift and you need 5 people there, something like that, you can probably do just by posting it on Facebook page and letting people reply and then saying, okay, you and you and you, great, let's put this together. But if you have several shifts and many volunteers, it starts to get really complicated if you try to do it with Facebook or email or so forth. And in those cases, I would recommend using some kind of a sign-up service. I use signup.com. So you can just set up the shifts there, and it's easy to use from there on. It's very simple system from there on to do it. Definitely helps you a lot when you're trying to coordinate these events. And then figure out the orientation needs. I usually send an email instructions for all of our volunteers about a week before the event, where I provide information about the location, what our display is like, how people can get there, if there's food available at the location, and whatever we are doing, whatever they would need to know about the event itself. I don't do too much orientation for most of the events, but there's good information on the handbook about how you can set up a call with the volunteers or even do a webinar with them if you feel that's needed. We do volunteer guide and more training for some of our big events, like our auto show where we have 9 days, and our state fair where we are going to be 12 days, 3 shifts a day. So there's plenty of people involved and it's a bigger event. Then we might do a training as part of our meeting before that. So those options, consider those depending on the size of the events, what you have. And then figure out what volunteers need to bring. Remind them if they have a chapter shirt, hat, vest, whatever, to bring those so that they can display who they are there. And then if there's not water and food available at the location, that's good to remind them that they should bring that. And one of the things that I always remind people is to bring sunscreen, because people don't realize, and I've got myself many times with this, is that you're going to be standing outside for several hours. you should definitely wear sunscreen at these events. So that's important there too. Yeah, so next I'll let Racine to tell you more about the insurance liability that EAA offers for chapters and do's and don'ts of rhino drives.
Thank you, Yuka. Yes, an important note here is that we say coverage as defined by the policy. The policy is available to read in detail on the Electric Auto site under documents, and I encourage you, if you have more in-depth questions, to go there as your primary source. Especially important here too is that legal expenses are included as there's a duty to defend. This is important because you may not even be at fault or whatever, and but then there can be legal fees. Our insurance does not cover a few things that I will just run through quickly here, which is libel, slander, physical attacks on someone by an EAA member. It doesn't cover any form of damage caused by improper representation in any form of advertising, nor does it cover workers' comp. However, note too that we were talking about Electric Auto members, doing ride-alongs in a member's vehicle. And remember that, those are very useful, but it's at your own risk as an EV owner. There's no coverage for injuries or property damage caused by autos. And each owner is responsible for providing their own insurance and selecting who they choose to take along, the duration of the trip, and the route. Members are advised against handing over keys to any member of the public. We feel that dealers are really best equipped to handle test drives. EAA does provide certificates of insurance. This is important because they're often required in bigger venues, and the organizers want to be listed as additional insureds. And EAA has up to $3 million in coverage, which is great insurance, and it's adequate for even the most risk-adverse venues. This insurance benefit thing is really important. As many of you may have already learned, big venues, you may be shut out from having events at malls and other places where foot traffic is really good. So with this policy in place, you can feel secure knowing that the national policy is covering you and your EV educators. And the only requirement would be that the event is hosted by a chapter with at least 5 paid members. And, we call ahead, the event coordinator calls ahead 2 weeks ahead to the insurance broker to list that event. So that pretty much covers insurance. Now I think we want to move on to our educational handouts. Yuka, you want to take it back for a minute?
Yeah, I just want to say that be choosy when you're thinking about the educational handouts. We definitely don't want to send people from our display with the bag full of all kinds of materials that they feel that they have to read before they can even consider buying an EV. So the idea is to talk with people, provide them good information, and then just provide them that information that they need. If they request something about charging, you can say, hey, this is how charging works, and this is how I'm doing it, but here is a really good information sheet for you about charging, if that's something that they're interested in. So just be choosy about that. But Racine, just tell us about the handouts, the examples that you have here.
Right. So we advise that at every table, every event, that Plug-in America's buying guide is a really good one. You can actually access that and Plug-in America's Charging 101 from our website and print those out for handout at events. But what I also like to have at the event table is a display copy of Electric Auto's current events, which is a wonderful 44-page full-color monthly e-magazine that members of Electric Auto receive, but a member can print one out and have it available at the table. It's a super publication. And then we have the Electric Car Insider Buyer's Guide, which is available through Chris Allen's group. I love this. It was my Bible when I was buying an electric car. Literally would sit in bed and leaf through and look at, compare vehicles. Every vehicle has its own page, has a review, has all the specs of range and MSRP. And then more recently, this is a fabulous tool put on by Plug-in America's, plugstar.com shopping assistant. And as you can see here, the consumer can go through and select their make, model, etc. But they can also go to the shopping assistant, which asks them a couple of questions and will narrow down the range of, depending on how far the person's driving, they want a sedan or an SUV, or the range, the cost range that they're in. It will narrow it down for them. And then further, and this is very unique, it will tell you vis-a-vis your zip code, after all the incentives, what the net cost is. And this is updated regularly for all over the country, and I don't know any other place that you can get that. And so often people think EVs are too expensive because they're just looking at the MSRP. So encourage them to hop on to the shopping assistant, go through the series of questions and narrow it down, and they'll be able to get the net cost, including lease cost. So I love this tool, and I love it also because it will connect in states where it's available to the special EV dealers that are friendly and knowledgeable about selling electric vehicles. So it will ferret it down to the preferred dealers. And I think, Yuka, you have some preferred dealers that you run through in Minnesota as well, don't you?
Yeah, we have a program in our state where our owners actually will recommend the dealers that they have had a good experience with, so that people will find good resources or good connections at the other dealers. This is very good if you have that locally available, whatever tools you have for it. Because we used to be, when we are at the events, we have an EV display there, and we speak with people there about EVs, and then they say, well, oh great, I could consider this, where can I test drive these? And then we just say, well, go to other dealers. And at that point, we were just throwing them in the black hole. We had no idea what their experience was from there on. So that's why Plugstar and tools like these are very important, because if we know that there's some knowledgeable other dealers, and I especially want to not just send them to dealers, but certain other salespeople that I know that are providing good service, that's very, very important for them to find. Our tool that we use locally here is a EV Sales Pro. So our owners have recommended those other dealers, but whatever tool you have locally available, just use those. That's very good.
Great. So now you could tell us a little bit more about day of event.
Yeah, I'll tell about that. Just a couple words about the tools also that we use as handouts here locally in Minnesota. We have our own EV list here about the vehicles that are available in Minnesota. Because we have only 26 different vehicles here, so we use just a paper copy, just low-tech approach to it. So that's one tool. And then the other thing is that use also your chapter business cards. We have in our business cards, we have on the front, we have the link to our Facebook page and also our website. So those are good links there. And on the back of it, it's kind of like a multi-tool. On the back of it, then there's links to like this tool to find the other dealer resources. Then there's a link to where you can find your utility company EV pages. Then there's a link to PlugShare to find the charging stations. And then there's also information about workplace charging and the workplacecharging.com. And then also multihousingcharging.com that provides information about condominium apartment building charging. So that kind of thing, you can use your business card as a multi-tool in that way. Good. Can we go to the next slide there? Then the day of the event. Keep it, again, simple and fun. That's the deal there. Arrive early. As a coordinator, be there 30 to 60 minutes before the start time, depending on how much preparation you have to do. Make sure that you're there at least 30 minutes early, even if you don't have to do any setup, because you want to make sure that the location works well. You have to figure out where to park the cars. And then when people come there, you can just direct them directly and say, this is where you can park, this is where we park that car, and this is what we do at this event. So just getting knowledgeable about the location and so forth. And often the guests also start to arrive early, so it's good in that way. Then how to best engage with event attendees. Again, keeping it very light. We don't want to be too pushy at these events. I have used for years just a simple phrase. I just go and say, have you driven an electric car yet? And if they say yes, then I answer, great. Well, which car did you drive? And the discussion starts there. If they say no, I say, well, you should, because they are really fun. And then the discussion normally starts there. If the discussion doesn't start, then it doesn't. That's fine. But it's just an easy way to engage with them. The other thing that you want to make sure that you tell them is that, can we move back to the slide, the right slide there, please? All right. The other thing that we want to make sure that tell them is that you are an owner here, sharing your experiences. So you're not a salesperson selling certain make or model. Even if you drive a Chevy Volt or Nissan Leaf, you're most knowledgeable about that car, but you're willing to tell them about any car, any plug-in vehicle, as long as it has a plug. You can share. You're happy to share information with them, and that's a important thing for the people to know, that you are just trying to provide a real life information, not really try to sell them anything. If there is in a day, if there's not too much traffic, if the foot traffic is slow, there's not too much attendees, and you have a big display, there's nothing wrong having some people go home if they need to go. So you can make your display smaller if needed. If it rains like crazy the whole day, or if you see that it's turning so that there won't be anyone there soon and the weather doesn't look very good anyways, there's nothing wrong in just closing the display and going home at that point. Because if there's no one at the event outside there, it doesn't make sense for you to be out there. So just consult with the main event organizer and see what makes sense. But we have sometimes done it that we have just closed the display if the weather turns bad during the daytime for it. Try to get some kind of count of attendees if possible, because that's valuable for you when you are reporting about the event, especially if you have sponsors or any partners in this, so that they can get an idea what you did there that day. And take a lot of photos. Do you have a full, take photos when your display is just set, take photos when people are there, share them on social media during the day, and celebrate the success with people. And then at next chapter event meeting, also share some photos and also be sure to mention by name the owners who gave so generously their time at these events. So that's a good thing to do too. All right, I'll let Rosine continue the next slide there. Tell a little bit about the National Drive Electric Week and National Drive Electric Earth Day.
Right. Signatures events, obviously, these are wonderful events and usually some of the biggest for our chapters throughout the year, and occurs each September for 1 week. Drive Electric Earth Day, new this year, takes place for the whole month of April. You can become a city captain. Keep in mind, there are multiple city captains available in any town, so you don't have to limit it to just one. There's lots of support available on the website, and webinars are offered, and we'll talk a little bit more about those coming up later. But this year's National Drive Electric Week just burst through every record. There were over 300 events, and we literally got thousands of people behind the wheel. So these are very, very important events to either become a city captain for or fold into maybe a utility is actually running the event, and you're folding into that. We advise signing up early to get your pin on the map. That's important to tell everyone. We try to get, every year now we've gotten events in all 50 states. It's incredible and it's growing. So become a part of it if you're not already. Talking up Drive Electric Earth Day, this is huge. Look at how many events the Sacramento chapter had in 1 month. and this, speaks to the importance of lots of event coordinators. On one day, they had events in 3 places. So you can see all their strategic partners, from an environmental council to high schools to colleges, and cities. And Kaiser, there's Kaiser, a healthcare organization, having an event. So this is a way to get a ton of people, engaged with electric vehicles and the education. So with that, we will take a look at the questions and answers. We have a question from Adam on, they'd really like to do test drives. Can we get insurance for that? Well, we would say contact your insurance broker. Perhaps you can get some insurance that way. As for, you saw our policies on electric auto, that we cannot insure for that, and that we really advise the dealers as best people to do that. Somebody else asked questions about getting links to all this resource and information after this webinar. That was Bill. Thank you for your question. We will be able to email a link to the recording of this webinar to everybody who registered. So watch for an email on that.
Rosine, can you also tell our audience where they can get the handbook so that they can get their hands on that one?
Great question. Yes, thank you, Yuka, for reminding me of that. Electric Auto Association members can go onto our website, and they can take a look at the event coordinator handbook. And, keep in mind that this handbook does go into even more detail than what you're getting today. Now, another question might come up. What are the costs? Yuka, let me field this one to you. Often event coordinators may be a little bit hesitant about running an event because of concerns about what they might cost.
Well, in our case, in Minnesota, our simple method is that we don't have a single dollar budget. So our budget is 0. So we just run the event so that we don't have to pay money for it. If there's an event where the organizers would like to us to pay something for it, we either have to find some sponsor helping us with us, or we just have to say, hey, this is how we roll. We can definitely provide you value by bringing the cars there. Now volunteers will be there, but we are not able to pay anything for the event. So that has been actually a very successful strategy for us. We haven't really ever had to turn down any of the events because we would have needed to pay anything for it, or any of those challenges. But that's working well. And I would say get partners. They're very valuable. Clean Cities coalitions are great. If you have local Clean Cities coalitions there, talk with them about it. They might be able to help you with some of these. Utility companies are extremely valuable and helpful because they see in value what you guys are doing. So talk with your electric utility companies and work with them with events. Those are the other good resources for you.
And Michael Patterson asks, when you have tagged along with other events, what events have you had the most success with, Yuka?
Well, we do a pretty good number of different kind of events. I have a short list here of examples of events that have been done by us and other chapters. So farmers markets display, we have done those at farmers market. We have a big display at the auto show. That takes a little bit more work to do in that way. You can be part of health fairs, school science and technology fairs, practically any kind of fair. That normally is a good sign that might work for you there. Then heritage fests, environmental fairs. We do a big display on our state fair, but for that one we have a big a long cooperation with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency that controls one area there, and we work with them to set that one up. Open street events, there's more and more of those, be part of those. We also, this year in the Home and Garden Show and stuff like that. Energy conferences, I'm just going next week to one energy conference there. We are setting up a display there and talking with people there. Maker Faire. Maker Fairs are around country. Figure out those. We've been part of Maker Faire here in Minnesota for several years. Excellent events because there's more very technically oriented people there at those events. Then we do even just EV expos at local churches. If there's a church members there who want to just educate their members about environmental things, sustainability, and EVs, after their church service in Sunday, they might want us to set up their EV display on the parking lot, and people can come and take a look at it. That's also good. Utility company events. Utility companies more and more want you to work with them on sharing information about the EVs and really bringing your user experiences to those events. We've also done events with universities, and we've been even part of some sports events. So it's a wide variety of events that you can do, and that's where kind of your members are key, because they are part of different events. So you can just tell your members, okay, well, this year, think about what kind of events you are part of naturally already, and if it makes sense for us to set up some kind of EV display there. And that's where it starts to grow.
That's great, Yuka. And here's something else from Bill Buckland, who points out that the major events like Drive Electric Earth Day, they have expenses sometimes to close a city street, barricades, police supervision, and they've been successful getting donations of between $250 to $500 from car dealers who want to exhibit. They seem to be pretty happy to participate. Thank you for that suggestion, Bill.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. We've also had utility companies to sponsor similar kind of events where we have had to pay for city for those kind of costs.
Great. Well, I think we'll close down our questions now. Those were terrific. Let me just go over briefly our electric vehicle event coordinator handbook, and you can see in the bullet points down the right hand side there of all of the factors that are going to be included in that. So we strongly encourage you to take a look at that on our website. And I want to talk to everybody a little bit about why it's important to belong to the national organization, which obviously you get the handbook as part of that. It just makes sense. If you're already an EV enthusiast and you believe that everybody is far better off falling out of love with their gas cars and in love with an EV, then it just makes sense to support the national organization and its education and advocacy programs. I'd like to, and why is it important? Look here at this slide. I mean, how many of us have been iced, with having a gas car taking up the spot of a charging station? The $7,500 tax credit that we know is, in such an awkward position at the moment. We need to have the strength in numbers to support the kind of legislation that can put forward favorable policies for our electric vehicle drivers. So a lot of people ask, what do you get for your membership? Well, I personally got it just kind of as a subscription to current events. I get this great 44-page e-magazine every month for just $35 all year. But further, you get an opportunity to win national awards. We've had, the most valuable players, some really fun music video awards this year, recognizing all the achievements of people who do this great volunteer work all across the country. And we have a new program coming up at Electric Auto, very excited about it, called Certified EV Educator. And that will provide some webinars and learning experiences, followed by quizzes. When they're passed, will certify EV educators, those of you out listening there, and to be eligible for pay where available. And thirdly, voting rights. We are a very democratic organization at National, and we everybody who is a member votes to elect national board directors. There's some policy alerts and some meet the director events. You get a name badge, and if you are able to support beyond the $35 level, you can get some membership perks from that. So again, it's only $35. What you do is you go to the website to join. So what we've learned, we've learned that simple display events can cost next to nothing and impact thousands, that consumers need the validation of an existing EV driver to feel comfortable with electric fuel, how this is a new technology for them. And the more event coordinators, the better. We've learned that DEED and NDO websites offer more free tools and support, and that the gold standard reference tool is the EV Event Coordinator Handbook, which we hope you all will get a chance to read. For more information, stay tuned to our next webinar, Electric Auto. And actually, there is a webinar coming up Friday, March 8th from 11 to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, called Marketing Your Event and Ride and Drive. There'll be lots of great information on promoting your event, including tasks to do on day of and actions to take afterwards, and especially focusing on the media and how to promote through that. So I thank you all for joining us today. We had an amazing group from all over the country and one person from Canada. So I will say thank you for all you do for electric vehicles, and we will see you next time.